Hi, this is Congressman Tom Cole, and this is another one of our weekly congressional chats. It'll probably be the last one about Congress for a bit, maybe not, but we're getting ready to go into the traditional August break pretty soon, although I expect Congress will be called back. Let me start, though, first with a piece of national news that I think is extraordinarily significant. You know, the technical definition of a recession are 2 quarters of negative economic growth. That was announced this week. We had a bad first quarter, we had another bad second quarter. It's been hilarious to watch the Biden administration try to say what everybody regards as a recession really isn't a recession. And they've spent the week arguing that. I think they've been, frankly, laughed off by the American people. If you ask the American people, are we in a recession? Any poll you want to look at will tell you the answer is yes. They understand that inflation is eating up whatever advantages they have in the job market, and certainly they're able to purchase less and less as this administration goes on and on. And I think that is the big economic news that is coloring politics. And what we're watching in Washington, while there's certainly some important things being done, are efforts by the Democrats to distract from that, to deny it's happening in the first place, and then to try and shift to other issues where they think they may hold a partisan advantage. In the end, I don't think that's going to work. I think the next election will be about the cost of gas and groceries and the quality of life for the average American, and Americans will render a verdict on that basis. They're not going to be distracted by sideshows. They're not going to be fooled by being told what they know is true isn't true. I think they're going to render a pretty harsh verdict in terms of their judgment about the success of the Biden administration in a little over 100 days. But again, we'll see about that soon enough. Congress has done some important things. I think one of the most important, there was a bipartisan bill. It was called the CHIPS Plus or Chips and Science bill. It certainly wasn't a perfect bill. There were things in it I would have changed, but there's no question that we face a couple of major problems that this bill addresses, and I was happy to vote for it at the end of the day. First, for literally 20 years, we've been losing our lead in the semiconductor industry. And as a matter of fact, we've lost that lead, and if anything, we're now dependent on imports of high-grade computer chips. This was a bill through tax incentives and some direct spending to try and address that problem, and most of the public debate went around that. But we do know this will be an important tool to lure back semiconductor production from overseas, particularly Taiwan and China, where we get our highest grade chips. Obviously, China, that's problematic. Literally, we have some weapon systems where they provide the most advanced components, and that can be cut off at any time. That's an unacceptable risk given how aggressive that country is. We also get lots of high-grade chips from Taiwan. Now, Taiwan is a friend of the United States, but they're 100 miles from China, and they're under threat. So the risk to that source is considerable. Finally, we're in competition with other countries where their governments are frankly underwriting the cost of this kind of technology. And again, we simply can't allow our companies to be forced to compete at a disadvantage. So we're going to do some things in this legislation to help that critical industry. Much less talked about in that bill was all the things that we do to improve science. This has actually been a bipartisan effort for many months. So about 70% of the bill is all about more money and resources for the National Science Foundation, money for STEM education for our young people so that they have the technical skills to pursue advanced scientific careers. I think, again, these are areas that the United States is going to have to be competitive in going forward. Bipartisan majority passed that legislation in the Senate. Bipartisan majority has now passed it in the House, and the president is certainly going to sign it. So I think it's an important step forward for the country. I was happy to participate in that. While Congress did some good things, it's busy doing some terrible things as well. At least the House is. Today, the Democrats will bring to the floor a bill called H.R. 1808. They'll call it an assault weapons ban. It's frankly much more than that. It's an unvarnished assault on the Second Amendment. We're going to take weapons platforms that are widely in use, that are very popular, so-called AR-15s, and make it illegal to sell them. That's just, if that were to pass, and it won't pass the Senate, the next thing would be, I think, an effort to try and reclaim those that are already out there. Now, this bill doesn't do it, but another bill probably would. And it's what tends to happen when the Democrats pass legislation dealing with gun control. If they get something, they come back for something more almost immediately. We passed, over my objections, a much less sweeping gun control legislation a couple weeks ago. I thought they would come back again, and lo and behold, here they are. So there'll be quite a battle royal on the floor about this. I think it'll be a largely partisan vote. If it passes, it'll pass very narrowly. It'll never probably even be considered in the United States Senate. So this is all about politics in November, and again, trying to distract the American people from the idea that there's a recession going on. Probably the biggest news in Washington actually didn't happen in the House of Representatives this week. It happened in the United States Senate. A smaller version of the infamous Democratic bill, Build Back Better, looks like it's going to be put together in the Senate next week and passed. If that happens, then it's likely that we will come back into the House sometime around August 8th and deal with that legislation as well. This is terrible legislation. None of us have seen the text yet, but we know it proposes a massive increase in taxes, massive subsidies for green energy, and so it's a typical budget-busting bill by the Democrats. There won't be a single Republican vote for it in the United States Senate. It'll be passed under what's called reconciliation. That is a product whereby the filibuster in the Senate can't be deployed, and you end up with being able to pass it with 50 votes and a tie-breaking vote from the vice president. That's what I expect to happen. I would be thrilled if it did not, but we'll see. Then we'll come to the House. This is a very narrow Democratic majority, only a 4 vote majority right now. After August 9th, it'll probably be 3. So I think they're anxious to try and ram it through as quickly as they can. That'll probably be the upcoming action that we have. So Congress, again, is pretty busy. I will say the Democrats had a meltdown on the floor this week. That is, they had planned to put in a lot more in the way of gun legislation. They were unable to agree to help police departments around the country, partly because parts of their caucus wanted to put in language that would hamstring police. Other parts simply didn't want to give the police any new money or resources at all. So they thought they might be able to pass a package of law enforcement bills that would protect them from the crime issue. Frankly, they fell apart. They just weren't able to come to an agreement within their own conference on that. So again, pretty hot and heavy up here in Washington, D.C. But again, let me end with the big news. The United States is officially in recession. The administration may try and deny that, but again, I think the average American knows it's true, and I think they know that this recession stems from bad policy by the Biden administration. Too much spending, too much government interference, being anti-energy and pushing up the price of everything that Americans buy. I think, again, the responsibility for where we're at economically is pretty clear when one party controls the presidency, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. That's something that the American people decide whether or not they want to continue come November. With that, look forward to visiting with you again in the not too distant future. We may do a couple of these from the district. We'll be traveling around Oklahoma quite a bit, answering questions. I know we have more teletown halls scheduled. I would always invite you to join us on that. You can get information about it on the website, and of course we'll be making announcements about that as well. Again, I hope the summer's going well for you, and I look forward to being back home and visiting with a lot of you in person then. Take care.